Harry Houdini died nearly a century ago, but his name is still synonymous with daring escapes and fantastic illusions. Black and white films of the genius magician being suspended upside down in a straitjacket or lowered into a tank full of water are still thrilling to watch. Houdini was a master of mystique, revered in popular culture and memorialized in books, movies, music, and even as a verb in the dictionary. One of Houdini's most enduring legacies involved his relationship with the afterlife and the possibility of communication with the dead. Erich Weiss was born March 24, 1874, in Budapest, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His family moved to the United States and settled in Appleton, Wisconsin. At an early age, he was fascinated by magic and acrobatics. He made his show business debut as a trapeze artist at a small circus in Appleton on October 28, 1883. He was billed as Eric Prince of the Air and was paid a nickel a day for his tricks. The Weiss family moved to New York City in 1887, and Eric started using the name Harry Houdini. He performed with his brother Dash as the Brothers Houdini. In 1894, Houdini met Wilhelmina Beatrice Bess Rana, a fashionable young woman who performed in a vaudeville song and dance act. They were married on Coney Island just 3 weeks after meeting. Bess replaced Dash in the brothers' act and stepped in as Houdini's assistant in a husband and wife team they called the Houdinis. They performed mind-boggling illusions together, most notably their signature trick, Metamorphosis, in which they switched places inside a locked trunk. Houdini also began to develop his now famous solo escape techniques during this time. In 1899, a theater manager saw the Houdinis perform in St. Paul, Minnesota, and booked them on a U.S. tour of vaudeville houses. The Houdinis' fame rose as word of Harry's unbelievable feats spread through the country. Soon, they were traveling internationally and spent nearly 5 years touring Europe at the start of the 20th century. Houdini's escape exploits grew more shocking as he arduously trained underwater to hold his breath and to withstand freezing temperatures. He miraculously escaped from milk cans, prisons, straitjackets, mailbags, iron maidens, underwater cells, and even a sea monster. His daring feats continued beyond magic and escape acts to include movies, stunt performances, and aviation. He shot to superstardom. Houdini found that his escapes had earned him a degree of fame beyond which celebrity, the adoration of the moment, passes into mythology, celebrity etherealized by historical memory, wrote biographer Ken Silverman. On July 17, 1913, Houdini's mother, Cecilia Weiss, had a stroke and died while he and Bess were in Sweden. Houdini was so stunned to learn the tragic news that he fainted. I, who have laughed at the terrors of death, who have smilingly leaped from high bridges, received a shock from which I do not think recovery is possible, he later wrote. Cecilia's death shattered the illusionist, and grief hung over him for the rest of his life. Popular Houdini lore has it that the escape artist developed an interest in spiritualism after Cecilia's death. Actually, he was already intrigued by the concept by this point, although it's possible that the loss of his mother intensified his desire to communicate with the deceased. As author Christopher Sanford wrote in Masters of Mystery, Houdini's failure to reach his dead mother eventually hardened into a crusade against sham spiritualists who deceived others with false claims of the ability to speak with those who have passed away. Houdini attended several seances when he was just 11 years old, after the death of his half-brother Herman, and when his father died in 1892, 18-year-old Houdini sold his watch to pay for a psychic reunion. During this supposed communication, the medium claimed that Houdini's father, who had died with significant debts, was very happy. Houdini found this hard to believe. It seemed strange to me that my father, knowing our pinched circumstances, would say such a thing, he wrote. At age 14, Houdini went to a seance where the medium duped attendees into believing that he'd contacted the spirit of Abraham Lincoln. As a budding Lincoln historian, Houdini knew a great deal about the 16th U.S. president. He asked the medium a question about Honest Abe and received an incorrect answer in return, which he saw as further evidence that spiritualism was a hoax. Houdini wanted to believe that communication with the dead was possible, but was well aware that these seances were nothing more than stuff and nonsense, done with special effects, hidden wires, and the like. In his early days as a performer, he used sleight of hand to imitate the methods used in seances. Although Houdini's acts were done for entertainment, he became concerned about unscrupulous spiritualists. His own experiences showed him that people in mourning could easily become mentally intoxicated by the desire to hear from loved ones, making them easy targets for grifters and scammers. Houdini devoted much of his later life exposing fraudulent mediums, sometimes wearing disguises to seances to avoid recognition. As he once told the Los Angeles Times, "It takes a flim-flammer to catch a flim-flammer." Houdini eventually gave his support for a bill to stop spiritualist charlatans from sucking every bit of reason and common sense from their victims. In his testimony before Congress, he declared, "This thing they call spiritualism, wherein a medium intercommunicates with the dead, is a fraud from start to finish." It was his work debunking fake mediums that led Houdini to meet Arthur Conan Doyle, author of the Sherlock Holmes mystery series. The two famous men had vastly different views on the subject of spiritualism. While Houdini was an outspoken skeptic and critic, Doyle embraced and promoted the movement. Despite their different beliefs, Houdini and Doyle shared a longing for lost loved ones and sought to explore the topic together. In 1922, Houdini and Bess went on a weekend trip to the New Jersey shore with the Doyles and their children. Lady Doyle, a practicing medium, requested Houdini's presence at a seance in their family's hotel suite. She said that Houdini's mother wished to communicate with him. The magician agreed, and during the seance, Lady Doyle used a technique called automatic writing to convey a lengthy correspondence from Cecilia. This written message was highly suspect. Houdini divulged to Bess later that his Jewish mother would not have used the sign of the cross, as Lady Doyle had done in her automatic writing. Further, Cecilia would not have communicated in fluent English, as she didn't even know the language. Houdini didn't accuse the Doyles of fraud, but the event damaged his already tenuous friendship with Arthur Conan Doyle. For all of Houdini's death-defying escapes, he couldn't evade his own mortality. His ultimate downfall was not the result of a dramatic daredevil stunt gone awry. Rather, Houdini's cause of death was sepsis caused by peritonitis, an infection of the stomach lining. The lethal condition was likely caused by a strange incident that occurred while Houdini was on a 5-month tour of the U.S. in 1926. While in Albany at the start of the tour, Houdini suffered a fractured ankle during his water torture cell stunt. Despite being unable to stand on one leg after the injury, Houdini pressed on and continued with scheduled shows. In Montreal, a small group of students visited Houdini as he rested in his dressing room. One of these students was a young man named Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead, who asked if it was true that the magician could resist the hardest blows struck to the abdomen. Houdini attempted to skirt the question and changed the subject, according to biographer Silverman. Whitehead pressed on, however, and asked directly if he could punch Houdini in the abdomen. Despite his weakened condition, Houdini agreed and prepared to get up so he could brace himself. Before he was able to stand, Whitehead began punching while more or less bending over Houdini. His blows were terribly forceful, deliberate, and well-directed, per one witness account. The other stunned students in the room yelled at Whitehead, but he socked Houdini 2 or 3 more times. This assault caused Houdini excruciating stomach pains, although he gave 2 more shows. With a temperature of 102, Houdini performed in Detroit, collapsing in agony between acts. Doctors removed his ruptured appendix in an emergency surgery and discovered the painful condition that had spread throughout his body. Houdini held on for days in the hospital, receiving well wishes from fans around the world who closely followed the newspaper accounts of his illness. He did not recover. One day he reportedly said, "I'm tired of fighting," and died. His death date was October 31st, 1926, Halloween. The celebrated magician was just 52 years old. Upon Houdini's death, Arthur Conan Doyle claimed that Cecilia Houdini had predicted the tragedy during that controversial 1922 seance in Atlantic City. "We did not pass the message on to him as we hoped it might prove mistaken, but that hope has now been dissipated," he told reporters. Bess Houdini was left crushed and broken by her husband's death, according to biographer Silverman, and said, "The world will never know what I've lost." Houdini was buried at Machpelah Cemetery in Queens, New York in the family plot, alongside his beloved mother. Per his wishes, a bundle of letters from Cecilia served as a pillow under his head. The funeral ceremony was filmed, although only a small part of the footage survives. Bess said that shortly before his untimely death, Houdini placed her hand on his heart and told her to be prepared if anything happens. She took this as a reference to a pact the two of them made, promising that if either of them died, they would reach out from beyond the grave to communicate with the other. Per the terms of their agreement, the deceased party would reach out using a special coded message. The secret phrase was, "Rosabelle, answer, tell, pray answer, look, tell, answer, answer, tell." This message was known only to the Houdinis to thwart any charlatans trying to trick the surviving spouse with bogus claims of supernatural communications. "With his dying kiss, although he did not know it then, I vowed to wait for that, and only that message," Bess recalled. "Please believe me when I say that I have taken an oath to tell the world when I do hear from him." Bess held yearly seances trying to communicate with Houdini from beyond the grave. The first of these sessions took place in 1927, and they continued for a decade. Bess's final seance was held at Hollywood's Knickerbocker Hotel on Halloween night in 1936. It was a glamorous affair, with 300 high-profile guests in attendance. Houdini's former business manager, Edward Saint, conducted most of the ceremony, which took place in front of the famous Hollywoodland sign. A locked set of silver handcuffs and a small shrine to Houdini helped to set a dramatic scene. Saint began with a lengthy speech and a prayer before directly addressing the magician. "Houdini, are you here? Are you here, Houdini?" he asked. "Please manifest yourself in any way possible. We have waited, Houdini, oh so long. Now this is the night of nights. Speak, Harry." Houdini's old performance song, "Pomp and Circumstance," was then played. The ghost of Harry Houdini did not make an appearance that night. Bess concluded, "It is now my personal and positive belief that spirit communication in any form is impossible. I do not believe that ghosts or spirits exist. The Houdini shrine has burned for 10 years. I now reverently turn out the light. It is finished. Good night, Harry." This final seance was recorded and broadcast over the radio. Years later, in poor health, Bess Houdini reflected on her decade of seances, saying, "10 years is long enough to wait for any man." The annual tradition did not end in 1936, however. The torch was passed, and devoted Houdini friends and fans continued the tradition in the ensuing years. Today, Halloween seances can be found in cities across the U.S. The 100-year anniversary of Harry Houdini's death will be on October 31st, 2026. While Houdini's spirit probably won't make a special anniversary appearance, the many celebrations honoring the great illusionist's legacy are sure to be appropriately eerie.